Alright, so it's 2 o'clock. I figure let's go ahead and start, right? If you haven't grabbed the packet already, you can go to the Etsy page, which is right here. Let me get a better link for you here.
I'll put it in the chat.
Natasha says she's going to stick it in chat there. The thing is, they add all this random stuff to the end of it. I'm going to go ahead and post it there too. And hopefully I can add that to the video after I do the broadcast as well. Elaine, hello. Great to have you from Brazil. That's awesome. I've been to Brazil. But yeah, if you haven't got the packet yet, I put the link in the chat there. Grab yourself a copy, or if you just want to see how it goes down from here before you purchase, that works great too. And just at the last minute here, I threw together a couple of slides to sort of explain why we do this sort of work, why we do personal mythology. This is really basic, so I'm just going to spend only a couple minutes on this. Personal mythology basically comes down to that everything that we experience in life comes down to an interplay of archetypes. So what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with archetypes, is that an archetype is basically like a model or a blueprint of pretty much anything in life. Now, there's numerous kinds of archetypes out there. There's Jungian archetypes. Those are really a different sort of thing to get into. I'm speaking of archetypes in the more traditional sense of like a model or a blueprint. So for instance, I wrote an article recently about rubber duckies and how the archetype of the rubber ducky. So this is a good example because there's many kinds of rubber duckies out there, right? There's all sorts of different colors of them now. There's like glow-in-the-dark ones. But there is an archetypal rubber ducky that, for most people, represents certain things, such as play or joyfulness, cheerfulness, childhood, being easygoing, humor, those sort of things, right? And that tends to be the same for most people when it comes to the archetypal rubber ducky. The interplay of archetypes is what happens when we experience anything in life. There are certain archetypes that come into play. They interact with each other, and what happens is we either gain meanings from those. Well, at the same time, we gain meanings, and we also impose our meanings on that play that happens in front of us. So, you're a kid, you get bit by a dog, and you gain meanings from that of, dogs are dangerous, or I need to protect myself better, and all these ideas come to you because of an experience that happened. That's the interplay of archetypes. Because of that, every archetype ends up meaning different things to you. But as Jung discovered, we across the world and also in societies, we build these meanings together. That what a dog means, what a rubber ducky means, all that sort of thing. And while we may individually have very different meanings, there's also a lot of them that correlate between societies, between countries all over the world. For instance, the archetype of the mother is a very common archetype that almost anybody can relate to the common meanings of what a mother is. And we use these meanings to determine our own meanings in life of who we are, what we represent, and our place in the world. So I have a few examples here. If you have a difficult father figure, you then associate father figures with all sorts of difficult issues. Thus, if you have a boss at a job who feels like a father figure to you, you're going to associate them with all sorts of issues that they never contributed to. right? And so you're going to project on them, and you may end up with a pretty difficult relationship with them because of that. Also, if foxes represent intelligence to you, you can heighten and empower your sense of intelligence by keeping foxes in mind and around you in different kinds of ways. Whether it's just keeping them in your mind, or you have an object nearby that represents foxes to you. You keep a poster of them, or you wear a shirt that has foxes on them. Something you can do to remind you of staying sharp. All right. So let's start. The first page on Mythic Animal Discovery, I just go through some ideas of what animals often mean to people, and how they're used in culture and around the world and that sort of thing. I'm probably going to skip over this. I don't want to necessarily read through the whole thing for you. If you've already read through it, you may not want to hear it all again. So go ahead and take your own time to read through that. It's not necessary to do the rest of the packet anyway. We can just move right on to the questions. Although you will notice there's a button here. It says See Examples. And that will take you to a whole other packet where my wife and I have gone through and we put all sorts of examples there so that you can really get an idea of how to fill out this packet along with our walkthrough today. Let me check the chat real quick, see if there's any questions I can answer. Yeah, for anybody just joining us, as I said earlier, Stanley Krippner will not be joining us today. Hopefully we'll get him on a later broadcast. Gregor says, 5 years ago I dreamed about a pot of gold. I was walking in the sea. Is there any meaning to that? I would say we probably won't go into much about dreams on this broadcast, although that'll be a big thing for personal mythology in the future. What I would do if I were you, just as a basic dream interpretation, Gregor, I would list out each of the sort of archetypes that happen in your dream. For instance, pot of gold, the sea, and walking through the sea, and I would think about what do each of those things usually represent to me. For some people, a pot of gold may induce a lot of anxiety or something. They may have a strange experience with, things that feel like treasure. For you, you're going to want to write down what these things mean to you and sort of interpret from that as a basis. But I won't spend too much time on dreams today. We're going to hit the Mythic Animal packet. Nori says, I'd like to go through each page briefly. I read it already, but I'm just curious for your take on it. Yeah, okay, great. And that is what we're going to do. So, page 1. Connections with an animal most often exist because it shares traits with you or embodies traits you admire. What real or mythic animals might you have something in common with or have a connection with? So, pretty straightforward. Some people already have these kind of connections, and I guess they're a bit luckier than the rest because not everybody has this connection already going on. But you'll notice that in that case, if you don't already feel like you have a connection with an animal, I added a question here. If you don't have this question on your current packet, that's because every once in a while I will update these, and what you can do if you want to see the update is go back to your Etsy purchase where they give you the link to download, visit that link again, and it will bring you to the updated version. And you can do a few things there. You can either fill in the updated version yourself, or you can see what's changed and sort of copy and paste that back into your older version. Either way works, whatever works fine for you. But this second question says, what are some of your traits? Thinking about these can also help you establish what animal to connect with. So you can just think about what sort of personality do you have, or do you consider yourself a funny person, a serious person, anything like that. Just do a sort of a stream of consciousness mind dump of what sort of person am I. Relate that back to what animals might you associate with those personality types. And then choose one that you feel most connected to. List some ways in which you feel connected to them so we can establish a basic relationship between you. Don't worry, you can duplicate this workbook later and choose other animals. So, take your own personality traits and the sort of traits that you might relate to different animals. Try to find a connection between them. If you consider yourself somebody who focuses on intelligence or being clever and that sort of thing, you might pick animals like a fox or a crow or I don't know, I can't think of another one right now, but those are pretty good examples that commonly people associate with intelligence. There's a lot of apes that have been shown to be very intelligent, who can use tools and that sort of thing. So find an animal that works for you. It doesn't matter you don't need to have like a super deep or spiritual connection with this animal. You just need to have something there, a little something that you want to explore. All right. List the animal's traits. This gives us a boiled down understanding of what the animal represents to you. I have a question for you guys in chat. When I highlight something like I'm doing right now, are you able to see that?
Yep.
Tosh, you can see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. That'll help. Yeah, so list your animal's traits. It's kind of hard for me to go more in depth on that, but same thing as listing your own personality traits, but do it for your animal. What do you associate with them? Do you consider this kind of animal to be a playful animal or a serious animal? Are they more like a predator type? And by the way, if you associate with a predator type animal, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are what people consider like a predator or something like that. Predator type animals represent all kinds of different things. For instance, confidence is a great trait to associate with those type of animals, or leadership. So predator, prey, carnivore, herbivore. It's don't associate animals with good or bad. They really don't exist in the realm of good or bad when it comes to personal mythology. Nori, you saw the highlights. Great. All right, page 2. So, animal trait stories. For each of your animal's traits, write about an event or perspective in your life in which that trait played a major role. This will establish a deeper understanding between you and your animal's archetypal nature. All right, so what we're doing here for each of your animal's traits, what we're referencing is back on the first page when we listed our animal's traits, right? For each of those traits, we're going to write about an event or perspective in your life. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of realizing maybe it's better if I use the examples sheets. So let's hop over to that. And in the animal's traits that we picked for these examples, we used a magpie. And by the way, these are not this animal and these examples. They're not my own examples. It's just something that I made up with my wife to fill in the answers. For the magpie, we listed mischievous, chatty, intelligent, witty, opportunistic. We've got a number of things here, right? And so on the next page, we're going to use those. Resourceful, mischievous, shrewd, opportunistic. And we're going to come up with an event in our life where that trait played a big role. So in this person's example, they say, as a creative realtor, I find I have to be resourceful to stay on top of mind and create unique, engaging content for my clients. So rather than put money into standard mailers, I use those traditional advertising funds to put on unique events that give back to the community and build branding in a more fun, engaging way. So this is a cool example of a really practical way to use personal mythology. This is somebody who is using the magpie, and they're using that to associate with their career in real estate. To me, that's just really cool, because what happens here is that normally real estate and careers and that sort of thing is not the most exciting kind of thing. I mean, hopefully you can make it a fun thing for yourself, but personal mythology adds this layer of enchantment, of romanticism, of magic to your life that you just don't tend to get anywhere else. I'll give you a great example, actually, of Stanley Krippner, that he told me years and years ago. Probably if I told him this, he'd be really surprised that I even remembered. But one thing that he does, he says that he has kind of a pretend little army of soldiers. And whenever he needs to do a new project in his life, he thinks to himself, how many soldiers do I have available for this project? Because every time he does a project, he sends so many soldiers of his own, which, to him, that's his resource, that's his time, his commitment to a project. In his mind is represented as these little soldiers. And he decides, how many can I afford to send to a project? And for him, that is the layer of personal mythology, the sort of magic that he adds on top of his life to determine, his place in the world. Where is he at right now? Is he spread too thin? Or does he have plenty of resources to add? So with the magpie, we're adding that sort of layer to our life, right? Another fun thing about this that I find happening to myself is that I have my own animals, I have my own associations with personal mythology, but whenever I read somebody else's, like this magpie example, it doesn't matter if it's a real example or if it's totally fake. If the examples are done well, I find myself associating with whatever animal it is. It could be a hamster, but by the end of it, I find that I've learned to add a new animal, a new color, a new element, a new role to my life that now has this extra layer to it. By the way, I don't know if I'm talking too much about the extra things about personal mythology that occur to me here, but these are the things that fascinate me, that make me so passionate about this field, and that make it so fun and useful in my own life. So I hope that, me talking about these kind of things, that's why you're here, is you want to learn about this kind of thing too. But I'll try and stick to the worksheet and not spend too much time on these things. I'll check out chat for just a second here. Nori, you're enjoying it. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so I won't go through every single little example. This examples worksheet is totally available to you. Again, if you go to your packet on the first page, it says see examples here, and you can follow right along and get your own examples as well. So we go through each of these traits. We add a story from our life that associates with these traits, and then we move on to the next page. And now we're at the trait myths. Choose one of the stories, right? One of these back here from the previous page, about your animal's traits to fill in this page. Think about the story. Did you find that a belief was reinforced, an excuse was made, or something else? If so, list those things here. This reveals some of your personal myths. These can be answered many ways, and you don't have to answer all of them. And you can duplicate this page to address more of your stories. All right, so now on the original page, this spot right here, it says your story name. Of course, whenever you find this asterisk, right, the little star mark, that's something that I want you to fill in with your own text, right? So we come back here, and what our reader has done here is they put in a story name of the vivacious reader. So what they are tackling here from the previous page is vivacious down here. They've brought it onto the next page, and their story is the vivacious reader. So since we're using that, let's go ahead and read that story. Vivacious. I was a vivacious reader as a child. I would hide away in the closet in my room and curl up to read for hours. I would consume a book a day if I had the time to do so. It brought me peace and adventure during stressful or dull times in my life, and I learned a great deal from the stories and still enjoy reading to this day. So this person has a really interesting connection to reading that the rest of us don't necessarily share. Sure, many of us may really enjoy reading, but most of us did not have this specific experience of hiding away in a closet in a cozy, dark space to sort of escape the rest of life into reading. And so that interplay of archetypes has built a very specific experience for this person. Because of that, they associate very specific meanings to reading. That means that every time this person reads, they probably get sort of background emotions and thoughts and things like this of that associate with that old experience of how they learned to read in their childhood. And because of that, they have, it probably feels like a little bit of a ritualistic experience, that when they open a book and they sit down to read, they probably have these background feelings of coziness and being tucked away in a little world. So when you not only find out these things about yourself, but let's say you have a friend who goes through this sheet and fills it out like this, that is something that you learn about them that nobody else is going to understand. Usually, for the most part, 90% of the time, your friend who filled this out and put that information there, that's not something that they shared with the world because, well, for one, that kind of conversation usually doesn't pop up, right? So there's that. It doesn't show up in social media, right? You don't find that kind of depth of conversation there. And it's just not something that people usually share. But because of the MyMythos worksheet, you can find this out about your friend, family, or lovers, and understand something about them that you never would have heard about otherwise. That's another reason why I love doing this so much. All right, so we've read the story about the vivacious reader. They've brought it into page 4 for the trait myths, and they're going to explore deeper what that means to them. And what's going to happen is they're going to go to belief reinforced, first of all, and they're going to ask themselves, during this time when I was reading and that story that they shared, was there a belief that was reinforced for me? Now, this title, Belief Reinforced, it can come across numerous ways to different people, and that's okay. As long as you just are exploring your story here, you don't have to think about what specifically is this supposed to mean. Just whatever it means to you is fine. Okay. So for them, they said, books and other tales are ways to escape reality and leapfrog my social and emotional learning. Great. So we have a basic understanding of what beliefs they have with that. What vice was given into? They say laziness and procrastination, as reading was often an escape. Okay, good to know. Another facet. That's really what we're building here is we have the gem of a story that we can learn so much from and is so vibrant with all its archetypes and meanings. And now we're carving out the different facets with these personal myths, right? Giving it more interest, more form. Goal progressed. Was there any sort of goal progressed here? They had a goal to be smarter than some of their family, to help grow out of poverty and generational traumas. Books were a tool that they used to advance themselves. So, really interesting facet there. For them, they felt that their family maybe was kind of behind when it came to modern ideas of, where they should be in their sharpness and their intelligence. And so to read, this person felt that this was how they were going to get ahead. And they felt like their family, was falling behind. They were maybe failing them in some respects. And they recognized that. And they wanted to fix that. They didn't want to live that way. So reading to them, probably to this day, represents getting ahead in life, along with the other meanings. All right, so again, I don't think I should go through everything here. Might be too long of a video. But these are fascinating to me. I hope they are to you too. I'm going to check the chat. All right, great. So let's head to the next page, page 5. Trait myth reflection. Our myths, which we just discovered on page 4, right? Each of these is a kind of personal myth. They're each in a kind of category. And by the way, I've been building secretly a long list of categories of personal myths. This is something I'm also working with Dr. Krippner on. Really neat stuff. I hope to reveal that soon. So each of those myths drive everything that we think, feel, and do. How do the personal myths you discovered on page 4 affect your life? Do you wish to change, improve, or get rid of them? Right, so big questions. And to be honest, these exercises, these questions that I ask you on these sheets, well, first of all, have taken many years to put together. A lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of revision. I've been through so many versions of MyMythos over the years. I won't get into that right now. But what I'm getting at is that this is actually just kind of a light going over of your personal myths. There's so much more that we can do and that we are going to do with MyMythos as new workbooks come out and we explore more in depth your personal myths. This page is a good example of coming at it from a very zoomed out perspective. Let me make sure I'm staying in frame here. All right, good. So we're tackling your myths from a really zoomed out perspective. And that's just going to give you an overall idea of where you are in your personal mythology when it comes to specifically this story in your life about, for this person, it's about reading. And something that you can do is these last few pages, like the last 3 pages here. I'm going back to page 3 here. I'm just jumping back. Or rather, let's go to page 4. You can duplicate this and go over each of these other things that you did on page 3. And you can duplicate page 5. By the way, to do this on Google Slides, highlight the page like I'm doing here. You can click between them. Oh, and okay, first, let's go back. To show all the thumbnails on the side that I have like this is, where is that? layout. Might be view, show film strip. I think that's what it is. Let's click it out. Yep, there we go. So view, show film strip. There you go. You get the thumbnails on the side. Very handy. Okay, so yeah. Now, when you click on one of these slides, you can hit Control or Command if you're on Mac, and the letter D as in dog. And that will duplicate. So, for instance, I'm on here, Command D, and there you go. You've got two of the exact same version. If you do it accidentally, you come right back, you hit Delete, and it's gone. All right. And you should be able to also hit Control or Command Z. If you mess something up, you can go back. They're also up here. Can you see my cursor? You should be able to see my cursor. Up in the corner here, you've got undo and redo. So that's helpful. All right. So yeah, you tackle things from a broad perspective, and then moving on to page 6. Write as if your chosen animal that you chose back on page 2, I think. Write as if your chosen animal is commenting on each of your answers on page 4. The animal could be giving advice, solving, putting a positive spin, admiring, thinking about, or criticizing. This will reveal the personal myths of your animal. Now really, and maybe I should rephrase that a little bit, it's revealing your personal myths through the lens of your animal, your understanding of your animal. So in this case, this is Musings of the Magpie. On the original sheet it says Musings of, and it asks you to replace the animal with your chosen one. And you just go through and you fill these out as if you're looking back on page 4, and you're taking the perspective of your animal, reading these things, reading your responses, and responding as if you were the animal. And that really helps to build a connection of where is it that your animal is coming from in your life, and what ideas, what wisdom can it impart to you about how you are handling life, how you could do things better, or how you're already doing things very well. This really helps to give you a connection with your animal. It may not necessarily seem like it's doing a lot right now, but I'll tell you, if you do this right, if you spend the time on it and care about what you're writing, what's going to happen is that as you go through life later, you're going to encounter these experiences again. And when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to have a mental trigger about this, about remembering what you wrote in these instances. And you're going to remember your animal. You're going to remember how it felt, what it said to you, and your own feelings about what you wish you would be doing, what you wish you would feel, how you'd like to be handling a matter. And your animal, you're going to associate with that, and it's going to help build an anchor for you to make those better decisions, to look at things in that different perspective. So that's how I use it, and it's been incredibly helpful. It's been life-changing for me. Story for another time. Many years ago when I started using Personal Mythology, it was a life-changing experience for me, so I'm hoping to bring that to the rest of you as well. So, yeah, that page, and then trait myth reflection. Using one of the stories your animal has commented on, write a story in which your animal improves and or worsens the experience. This will trigger the memory of your animal when you encounter similar experiences, allowing you to utilize its wisdom or avoid its faults. So it's basically what I was just talking about, but you're going to choose one specifically to go over. So it's going to do what I just talked about, but it's going to do so in a much more in-depth kind of way. By the way, I think I may have edited this later to say, write this as magically as you like, right? So that means what you can do is you can either, if you're just a very practical, logical kind of person, and you just want to write this as realistic as possible, that's fine. What I recommend sometimes is to get kind of fantastical about it, actually write it a bit magically, because the way that we're approaching the whole approach of personal mythology in the first place, when you're using these archetypes like animals and colors and elements and such, it already is coming at life from a very metaphorical perspective, which lends itself to a very fictional kind of realm. The mind, the way that it works, is very metaphorical. Honestly, I would say for the most part. I think I have some resources that talk about that and help prove that theory, but I'll have to find those later and list them. So when you engage the mind, when you engage your psychology from a very metaphorical, i.e. magical perspective, you're really helping to solidify in your mind these ideas, these perspectives. And if that's something you're interested in, you can look at the study behind fairy tales. Actually are very, it's the oldest way to do this. And that is how we often taught lessons to children in the past. All right, and so that is basically the end of the workbook. There is some more that comes after this, sort of some bonus material. So there's the end of the part where you really do the deeper work, right? Like I say, we'll do even deeper work later on other packets. After this, the things that come after this, I consider more bonus material or kind of fun material, or just things that you can put together that you might find shareable on social media or something like that. Which, by the way, I would really encourage. For other people who don't already have this specific interest in personal mythology, they might find it kind of daunting. They might feel like it's a little too much work for them, it's a little too deep or heady or something. But when they see something like, these kind of graphical elements with just, one paragraph of text, I think they feel like it can be much more engaging than they think it is. And it is more engaging oftentimes than they think it is. When I first got into personal mythology and I was reading all this really heady material about it, that was one of my feelings, was that this could be made to be much more exciting and fun and colorful. So, that's what I'm doing here with MyMythos. So, in short, share these if you can. Fill out these bonus materials. Take a screenshot. What you can do is come up here to File and Download, and you can download a JPEG or PNG image. You can share those, and you can come to the Facebook group. You can actually post them anonymously. So it's a new feature on Facebook groups. You could share all of your packet. You could do so anonymously. And that way you could have more in-depth conversation about it with other members of the community, and I'll come there and chat about it with you as well. And this is kind of a crest, and this was inspired by actually Dungeons and Dragons, because when I was a young teenager and trying to play D&D, one of my favorite things was filling out a character sheet. And it would just have all this stuff about, what is your character really about? And I love that so much. So I found a way to bring it into here, and this is really one of my favorite sheets on the whole thing. So I hope you have as much fun filling it out as I do. There's a blank sheet that you can just use for your own notes. You can write more stories. You can expand on previous questions. And I think one of the last things that I want to say about all of this is that for me, and this is something I reference up in the beginning, for me, this is like a sacred document. For me, this is a spirituality, but it can operate very easily as just as a psychological exercise. If you're not into more spiritual kind of things, if that's not really for you, you can treat this completely as a psychological experiment, or as not just an experiment, but something that just works in a psychological way. For me, it's a bit more than that. This is a lifestyle for me. I live what I consider a mythological life, and for me, I love that because not only does it add a whole layer of enchantment to my life, but it does so in a practical way, and it does so in such a way that, when it comes to religions and things like that, other people, they can follow whatever kind of religion they like. It's up to them. For me, religion gets a bit too magical, actually. It gets into different ideas of things that, for me, I don't have the faith necessarily to support that kind of system for me, that kind of spiritual system. But with this, it's not really about faith in things that don't exist, or or may not exist, or that you have to have faith in. This is just about your own associations, your own meanings about things in life. And I really like that. I think it's a great way to live your life. It brings a lot of romance and magic back into life that may have not been there before. I hope you feel the same about that. I think I'll wrap things up here. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to check the chat right now. Gail says, "Hi Stan, looks great. I look forward to repeating some of the pleasure of personal mythology." Stan's not here today, unfortunately, but he probably will watch this video, so he can see your chat, so that'll be great. I have an echo, Gail says. Is anybody else hearing that?
I didn't hear it.
Tasha says she did not hear an echo. Nori says, so on this page, the animal talks to you. Yeah, so basically, let's go back to that page.
Page 6.
Yeah, page 6. Nori has a question about your animal talking to you. You can take it as that perspective, absolutely. If that's what works easiest for you, that's what I do. You can either sort of pretend in your head your animal's talking to you, or you can just, try and form an idea of like what would this animal say if they were able to. Nori says, I like down-to-earth spiritual mythology. Me too. Ariel's here. Sound is very clear on my end too. Hey, Ariel. All right, great. Does anybody else have any questions? Looks like we're about good to wrap it up. Does everybody feel like I covered this well enough? Like I went over things enough? Or let me know if there was too much talk about other things. If you'd like it to be a little quicker, or if that's something that you appreciate in these kind of things. I'm always looking for feedback. Nori says, I read the book, but hearing you speak about it, I feel ready to start working on it. Awesome. Please for sure keep me on your list. That's great. Yeah, I was hoping that for some people, if they picked up the workbook, but they didn't quite feel inspired enough to get to it yet, I was hoping this video would give them the push. And I think another thing to add to that is sharing it in the Facebook group can really be a fun experience. If you go there now, you can see some of the things that other people have done, and maybe that'll inspire you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. This has been really fun, and I hope to do a lot more of these. There's going to be a lot more workbooks to come. Thank you so much. I have to figure out how to stop recording now. All right, here it is.